Yes, sir. We're officially back at it. This is Boog Nice coming at you with the Mezco Toyz 112 Collective PX Previews exclusive X-Force Wolverine figure review. Let's do it.
This ain't for no scalper. You a scalper? Then fuck out shit. This one's for them real collectors. That's army building and posing figures. Marvel Legends, imports, mini matey, I'm fucking with them. Hype beast, we know about you. Stay buying figs, don't know about it.
And on one side of the box, you can see it says Wolverine and MezcoToyz.com. And yes, this is the 10, by the way. All right, forget about that box. Let's look at the figure. I have the X-Force version of Wolverine out of the package here. This is Mezco's third Wolverine. They released the Tiger Stripe version. They released the version with the brown suit, which was actually supposed to come out first, if I'm not mistaken, but they ended up releasing the yellow and blue version because I think they got a lot of backlash with how the version in brown looked. And then they still ended up dropping a brown suit version, and a bunch of people still copped it, even though I thought it looked awful, so I passed on that one. I do have the Tiger Stripe version, and I'm happy to have this guy here, but I do have some issues. There is some issues here with the limited range of motion. While he does look great like most Mezco figures do, there is very limited range of motion on this guy. Let's look at his accessories. Straight out of the package, he comes with a set of fisted hands, and these look fine. You can even see the little slits where his claws will come out, so that was some fine attention to detail. I don't really have any issues with the way these look. And a quick look at the pegs before I swap on the next set. You can see that those pegs are pretty small, so you should be careful as you're swapping out the hands. He's got a set that are semi-open, and like with most Mezcos, the hands are a soft plastic, so it's not really an issue to get anything into his hands. And these look fine, and while I have these on, I guess I'll break out his accessory that he does hold, which is a sword. And there's his sword and sheath, and not too crazy, not too much detail. The sword actually looks like it's a little crooked, the blade, so that's not good, but there's the sheath, not much detail on there. You can see a couple of little wraps around there. This is actually kind of lackluster for Mezco in my opinion. I think they could have done a little bit better with this, but the sword can be sheathed, and it's a nice snug fit, not going to come out of there, so that's good. And there he is holding the sword and the sheath in the other hand. I'm not really liking the way he looks holding this because of how the fingers are positioned on his hand. I don't really like the way that goes. It can't kind of just slip in there this way. It's got to kind of be on an angle. Let's see if he can hold it with both hands. I don't think so. Sort of. You know, he doesn't really have any butterfly joints, anything like that, so you can't get his arms out in front of him to really extend his arms while he's holding the sword with both hands, and not to mention that he's kind of bending the handle of the sword here too. So I don't know, I'm not really feeling that. Then he's got a set of hands that are open with the fingers spread, and these look fine. These were probably the easiest to swap on. And then finally he comes with his hands with the claws out. These are fisted with the claws out, and these look great. My claws came out pretty good. They're not warped or anything. They definitely have a sort of metallic finish to them, and I think they're about the right length. I didn't really have any issues with the length and the look of the other claws on my Tiger Stripe Wolverine, so these are pretty much the same. No issues here. And just taking a closer look at this head sculpt before I swap out and show you his last accessory. And I don't really have an issue with this. I know some people were concerned with whether or not he was going to come with the red eyes, and he does, which is pretty comic accurate. And at this point, if you haven't read any of the Uncanny X-Force runs, then you are doing yourself a huge disservice, and you need to go back and read some of that. You know, obviously this is a play off of that book, along with the Deadpool and the X-Force costume, so you should definitely go backtrack and try to read some of those issues if you haven't done that yet. And there's a look at that ball peg before I swap on the head. Looks to me like it's about the same size as the other one, so I guess I'll be able to do some swaps with the other Wolverine as far as the unmasked head goes. And there's his final accessory. Aside from this, there is a stand in there with a little Mezco bag where you can store the accessories and stuff like that. You always get a stand with the Mezco figures, and I never mentioned that, but it is in there. I'm not going to be breaking it out, but yeah, this head looks pretty good. I'm pretty sure it's the same one that we got with the Tiger Stripe version, but for whatever reason, this just looks better in the black and gray with the red eyes. I think this looks real mean. I think it looks real clean, and I don't really have any issues with this one. I like the shape of it. You know, it looks good on this body. And then just taking a closer look at his deco overall, like I mentioned early on, the figure looks great. You know, aside from this seam here down the back, which is something that they haven't seemed to be able to avoid with Mezco. It's funny, I was talking to my man Punka Mike on the A.C.B.A podcast this past week, and he was saying how 3A does a really good job with their cloth clothing, and he thinks that it's better than Mezco. And while Mezco stuff does look really clean, I do feel like 3A may have the edge when it comes to the clothing. But looking at Wolverine stuff here, the pouches across his belt, everything looks good. The X is nice and pronounced, and it's a nice bright red. This sort of faux leather feels really cool to the touch, and even this other material down the side. The whole entire thing feels like a sort of leather material, like a faux leather as far as the bodysuit is concerned. And then when you get down here to the boots, this is a different texture. You can see some wear and some weathering here at the top of the boots, but then his boots look pretty clean down here. But I do like the way they look, and the treads underneath look good. Like I mentioned, the gloves look good. You know, he looks really great. The shoulder pads look much better in black than they do on the brown suit version or the tiger stripe version, in my opinion. And pretty much all of my issues lie within the lack of articulation, or the lack of the range of motion, because the articulation is there. You know, it's one of the basic molds for Mezco, but because of how this suit is fitted and because of how it has this sort of faux leather material, the range of motion is extremely limited. On the tiger stripe version, you had sort of like a mesh outfit, so you can get him crouching pretty low and get him to move around pretty well. But with this guy, you're not going to really get that same range of motion. So these shoulder pads can come off, and that's an issue too. I don't like the way that they come off very easy, but if they didn't, then you might actually break them when you're trying to articulate his arms and his upper shoulder. But these can actually move on the peg as well. They move up and down. If I can get this on and get it to stay properly, that'd be nice. So yeah, they actually can move up and down, and they're supposed to move out of the way when you want to put the shoulders up. So the shoulders can come up pretty far. Not too bad. Could probably get them up just a tad bit more, but that's about it. They can do a full 360 if you actually take the shoulder pad off. You can get the arm to spin fully around. You do get an upper bicep swivel. You do get a double jointed elbow. You get a swivel and a hinge on the wrist. I'm not really a fan of these wrist pegs either. The hands seem to come off a little easier than the tiger stripe version, but the range of motion on the arms are decent because the arm is pretty much fully exposed, and because you can pop off that shoulder pad. But as you get into the torso, that's where you start to lose a bit. So the upper torso can move back and forth. It can move left and right, just about that much, and you do get a little bit of ab articulation. There is a waist swivel a little bit, but not really. You're not going to really get to utilize it. You do get the legs to come up just about this far. A split will come out just about that far, and you can see the legs kind of coming back into place here, again, because of how this material is. You do have a double jointed knee. You do have rotation at the upper boot. You get just this much hinge on the foot. There is pretty much no ankle pivot. I feel like the ankle pivot is even worse than that of the tiger stripe version, which was okay. I totally skipped over the head, but the neck actually can move independently of the head, and then the head moves on that ball joint as well. So you get a nice range. It could pivot and rotate and do a full 360, and then you can look down pretty far. Not going to look up too much. It would be nice if you could actually get them to look up more, because when you get them crouching as low as you possibly can, you want to get them to be able to look up at a potential opponent or what have you. But this is just annoying, man. The fact that you get them down pretty low, but you know, you can't really pivot the feet. So if he's kind of like not flat-footed, or you can't get his feet planted, it just doesn't look right. When you start pushing them down that low, you can see a little bit of stress here. And obviously, if you continue to push them to the limit like that, then at some point you might have a tear in his costume. So again, I do really like the way the figure looks, and it's probably going to look nice paired up with Deadpool, which I'll break out in a second. But the limited range is a little heartbreaking, and you can see as I have him crouching down pretty low, I hate the way that looks, that you can't roll the feet on a nice ankle pivot and get them flat-footed. I just really hate the way that looks. That's something that we always teach in the A.C.B.A group as far as planting the feet on your figures, and because nobody stands like that on the sides of their feet. You know, no matter what, you're going to get low, you're going to plant your feet. So, you know, the shoulder pads, the fact that the hands pop off pretty easy here from the wrist, the lack of ankle pivot, and just the lack of range in the torso in general are my major gripes with the figure, but he is very nice looking. And a few quick size comparisons. There he is next to himself, the Tiger Stripe version. And like I mentioned, the range of motion on the foot here is definitely better. You definitely get more of a pivot here on this one, and it moves, it hinges better as well. There is a slight pivot in the hinge on this one, and you don't really get that same range. It was still bad on the Tiger Stripe version, in my opinion, but it's still better than this newer one. You can see how the boots differ, and again, because of the mesh costume on the Tiger Stripe version, you definitely get to move them a bit better, and you don't feel like you're about to ruin your $90 figure. And the head sculpts seem to be the same, just looks like the paint might be just a little bit different on the face on the X-Force version, but it looks to me like it's the same head sculpt. But I do like the way the paint on the face looks on the X-Force version. A little better than that of the Tiger Stripe. And yes, you can swap on the unmasked head that you got with the Tiger Stripe version onto this X-Force version, and it looks good. I think the proportions look fine. I actually like that a lot. I know a lot of people weren't a fan of this particular head sculpt, but I think it looks pretty good, especially on this body. And then there he is next to his teammate Deadpool on the left, and you can see how their outfits match up and they look good together. And on the right, we have Punisher. So you can see Punisher's a bit taller than Wolverine, as is Deadpool. It would have been nice if they would have explored something totally new with this Wolverine and given us a smaller buck, just a tad bit shorter, and really given us a true to scale Wolverine. That would have been nice for them to step outside the box and introduce a new body mold. That would have been really cool. But I do like the way him and Deadpool look together. Let's get them two in a shot alone. So it's wonderful to pair these two together in matching outfits. Although they are not completely comic accurate, it still makes for a nice pair up, a nice team up here. I would love to see Mezco explore this team a bit more. Wouldn't it be great to see X-Force version of Archangel or Wolfsbane? It'd be crazy if Mezco came out with a Wolfsbane before Marvel Legends, but again, it is very frustrating dealing with this particular figure as far as posing them up. I know a lot of Mezco collectors like to just kind of take them out the package and put them on the shelf and put them in a vanilla pose, and that's it. But with me personally, you know, I'm gonna try to push my stuff to the limit, and I really want to get a lot of playability, posability out of the figure. And this guy is a bit frustrating as far as the articulation and some of the parts popping off and all of that stuff. But the ability to do stuff like this, add a little cutouts and take some pictures and stuff like this, something simple and vanilla, it still adds to the fun factor. I wouldn't pay anything over retail for this Wolverine though, and I know that's what's going to happen. I know it's going to probably start going up crazy on the secondary market, especially if they were to expand and do more characters from this team. But I'm happy to have this guy. You know, I'd give it a 7 out of 10 maybe, or 6.5 out of 10. Not the greatest Mezco figure, but essential if you already have this the X-Force Deadpool. Alright, so as always, rate, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, peace.
That's crispy.